We're here with Guy Brasseur. He is a member of the Max Planck Institute for Meteorology and head of the Environmental Modeling Group, also a distinguished scholar with the National Center for Atmospheric Research. Thank you so much for joining us, Guy.
Thank you.
Now, you have been studying climate science for a very long time, much longer than I guess it's been more of a buzzword.
Yes, in fact, when I was in primary school, I was already interested by the weather, and I had my own weather station. And when I was in engineering school, I wanted to study, something related to satellites, and I started to get involved, for example, in studying the ozone layer. And then when you talk about ozone depletion, you start to be very, very close to climate change.
We don't hear about it. I remember being, like you said, in primary school, elementary school, and that was really a big topic. So talk a little bit about where we are with that today.
We know that ozone protects us from UV radiation, and so it was probably the first global environmental problem that was put on the table that required a worldwide solutions. And so an agreement was signed in 1987 in Montreal to basically reduce and then later on to ban the formation of those chlorofluorocarbon that the industry was putting together. So it's a successful story.
And you leading up to that, you talked about it being connected to climate change, and I mean, interesting that that could be a parallel that we're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, climate is another global environmental problem, just like the ozone depletion problem. There are differences. One of the differences is that the climate problem is much more complicated. And this is why you have IPCC that does assessment, and you have COP which tries to find solution. But you can see that it takes much more time before we can bring everybody in the world together to agree on some measures.
Now, you having really witnessed the entire evolution of this, do you see that change?
In the late 70s, in the 80s, we had to convince people that CO2 was going to be a reason for global warming and for climate change. And so it seems to me now that a lot of people have accepted the science, realize that indeed greenhouse gases are a problem, but then now we're moving into a new era, which is what are the solutions? And so, yes, the field has evolved from a pure, let's say, physical scientific problem into a societal problem, into a political problem, and into a problem that requires, for us scientists, a lot of skills in communicating, in explaining, in listening to what people believe.
Well, thank you so much, Guy, for joining us today, and we're going to have much more for you coming up.